Now this is a little more like it. Welcome back to The Haunted Beard. My name is Jake, and I have been making my way through the entire Halloween series, with the exception of the very first film, the original from 1978. All of these are a first-time watch, and today I am talking about Halloween H20 20 years later. So let's get into it. Well, this is obviously set 20 years later after the original film. The film came out in 1998, and it tells the story of Laurie Strode, who is now the dean of a private school in Northern California, and she is living under an alias by the name of Carrie Tate. And the film opens up in Illinois, and we find out that Michael Myers breaks into a house to steal some paperwork. It turns out it's the secretary of Dr. Loomis, and he steals the file on Laurie Strode to find out where she's living, because after all these years, he's still on the move and hunting her down. So she is living in Northern California, and it's been 20 years, and she just can't quite get over the idea that Michael Myers might not be dead, and that thought haunts her, and turns out she's obviously right, because Michael Myers is on the prowl and he's coming for her. Now with this film, what they end up doing is they basically sort of kick out parts 4, 5, and 6 from the Halloween canon and act as if those never happened. And in creating Halloween H20, they sort of reconnect it back to fit onto the end of part 2. And so to kind of synchronize the timelines, you're going to go Halloween 1, 2, and then H20. And they basically completely disregard 4, 5, and 6 from the Halloween canon. So that's how this one's set up. So that is our story. And I will just say from the get-go, this movie gets things back on track pretty well. I had a fun time with this. It's obviously not a perfect movie, or I wouldn't even necessarily call it a great one, but I think it is good, and I had a fun time with it. One of my favorite things about this movie is that it takes some of the kind of tried and true setups to the scare scenes and techniques that we've seen before and gives them a bit of a creative, fresh twist that kind of subverted your expectations. At least it did to me, that I really thought worked really well, and I liked quite a bit. A few examples are, the film opens up and a woman's getting ready to go into her house, and she finds out that it's been broken into. Neighbor kids come over to check it out. They call the police. And what the movie does, and it's done something similar, but it kind of gives a twist on this, is she goes back into the house after she thinks the coast is clear. She's still waiting on the police, but she goes back in there, and the back door we see is open. We find out, she doesn't know, but Myers is there. We see him in the background, kind of a classic shot that we've seen many times. And the back door opens up. And this franchise has done stuff with doors before, right? When people are looking through and a door creaks open. I can think back to a scene in the first film. And so she goes down to check it, and we expect Myers to kind of pop out and attack her, but that doesn't happen. And so she ends up walking back out and going back over to the neighbor's house, and turns out the neighbor's house got attacked, and the 2 kids who just helped her out are dead, and then she gets attacked there. And so it just kind of delays when what's going to happen, and it just kind of puts a nice twist on it. There's another scene later on in the movie that provides a nice twist as well. We've seen a handful of times in this franchise where characters are running from Myers, and they get to a door that's locked, and they're pounding on the door, "Let me in, let me in, let me in." And this is a scene with Josh Hartnett and Michelle Williams. They're running away from Myers. They're trying to get into this gate. They have a key. They get into the gate, and we think, oh, they're safe. But then right inside the gate, there's another door. And there's about like a 4-foot gap between the gate and the door, and Myers reaches in through the gate, and he's swiping at him with a knife, and it just, again, kind of added a nice kind of cool little twist. It's like, oh, we think they're safe when they get through the gate, but it turns out they're not safe. They're still stuck at another door, and Myers is right there swiping at a knife with them, almost hitting them. And then there's another scene towards the end where Jamie Lee Curtis and her boyfriend are in the school and they're running away from Myers, and you think it's him who kind of comes up a stairwell, and her boyfriend shoots him, and you think, oh, okay, they shot him, but we know Myers isn't going to die, right? And so they walk over there, and you're expecting Myers to just right pop up and then attack him. Only they didn't shoot Myers; they shot LL Cool J, the cop, and then Myers attacks him out of the background. And so there's just a few kind of prime examples of what this movie does in terms of kind of giving us some of the classic setups, but providing a nice little twist and fresh take on them that I thought worked really well, and I enjoyed quite a bit. Now, this is a 90s slasher movie, and you can definitely tell. It has a sense of humor. It's a little silly and a little goofy, and I'm sure, at least to some degree, it was kind of influenced by Scream to kind of bring in some comedy and some humor into a horror film. It's not quite as good as that. The humor doesn't work quite as well, and some of it is a little goofy and cheesy, and it doesn't work. But some of it works pretty well. I couldn't help. I did laugh out loud a few times. I couldn't help but laugh at LL Cool J's character introduction, which is just so ridiculous. And yeah, it's silly, but it's kind of funny. So it's a bit of a mixed bag with its humor. Also, the intended jump scares are aplenty, and there are so many times where characters turn around and bump into somebody, or another character will try to scare somebody else by, coming out of the shadows, and just many times where you just kind of get those moments where they'll just kind of blast you with some music, and a character gets all startled because they ran into somebody, or turned a corner and there's somebody there, or opened a door or whatever. And it's just, yeah, I mean, films still try to do the jump scares. It just feels like such an old and dated technique at this point, and I know maybe it wasn't as much when this movie came out, but I couldn't help but notice it, and none of them really work, and it definitely kind of gives a cheesy, dated factor to this movie. Not by any means to ruin it, but they're definitely there, and they just don't work. You kind of just roll your eyes at them. Another aspect of this movie that I thought was really strong was the performance of Jamie Lee Curtis. She brings it in this and really adds a lot of depth to her character. And one of the, I guess, little critiques that I made with the original Halloween is there's not really a whole lot to the character of Laurie Strode, but this movie really kind of fleshes out her character more. And I'll say, especially after the end, I am like officially on board. I am a Laurie Strode fan. So she's really strong in this movie. Adds some depth to her character. There's a lot more kind of, I guess, dramatic weight than I was expecting. She has more to her character than I was expecting. There is kind of some deeper stuff here than I just, again, wasn't expecting. She's a functioning alcoholic in this movie, and she's trying to navigate her past trauma with being a good mother, and there's some tension between her and her son, who's played by Josh Hartnett, and there's some pretty dramatic scenes there that I think work pretty well, and you can just kind of, she just does a good job sort of portraying her sort of inner struggle and inner turmoil, and there's just a lot more there than what I thought would be, and I thought she did a great job in the film.
With you saying that
well,
word.
then don't put me in the position, John. Do you know what day it is? Of all the days for you to pull this shit, what do you think you can do? Just wander around town? I don't ask you for very much. Just give me one
Mom,
day!
I've given you 17 years.
And I need you to be responsible. Do you know what that means? Responsible.
Don't talk to me about responsible,
I
Mom.
just need this one thing.
Mom, I am not responsible for you!
This movie does pretty good in the sort of tension and suspense building department. There's a scene earlier in the film that I think is probably the best in terms of suspense, and that's when a mom and daughter stop at a rest stop to go to the bathroom, and Michael Myers is there, and he breaks into the bathroom, and there's just this really sort of tense scene where the mom's in one stall, her daughter's in the other stall, and Myers is in there, and for a minute I'm like, okay, is he getting ready to kill this child, right? And there's just some good tension in that scene. He ends up stealing her purse to steal her keys so he can take her car, but that's a pretty solid scene and a highlight for me in this movie. Let's talk about the kills. I thought the kills were pretty good. I feel like there might have been a little bit less of them than typical, but uh, the ones that we do get are pretty good. Some of the ones that we don't actually see, we just see the aftermath of, but the aftermath is pretty gnarly, and so it kind of makes up for the fact that we didn't actually get to see them. The opening kill is pretty good. I really liked Joseph Gordon-Levitt's little scene, and his kill when you see he's got an ice skate through his head was kind of cool. Uh, Later on in the movie, Charlie's kill, we get a little short-changed on, but it's not bad. And then Sarah's kill is pretty gnarly with her in the elevator. Her leg gets hacked off, basically, and then um, we find she gets hung up in the ceiling. So there's some pretty good kills in here. I don't know if I'd say it's the best of the franchise, but definitely satisfactory. And you definitely get, if you feel shortchanged at all, the last, probably 15, 20 minutes of the movie, I think really makes up for that in terms of just the intensity and the violence and just the good stuff that you're expecting with a Halloween movie. Speaking of the last 15 minutes, let's talk about it because this is, in my opinion, the best part of the whole movie. And Laurie Strode finally decides, she turns into the heroic character that we all know and love, right? She sends her son, who's been stabbed and injured, and his girlfriend out of the school to get to safety, and she decides to stay back because she's going to take a stand and finally take it to Michael Myers. And this is just fun stuff. She grabs an axe and just starts screaming his name, and I just couldn't help but have a smile on my face because you're like, okay, she's about to bring it, and this is going to be good. And the sequence you get of her fighting Michael Myers is just great stuff. I just had a lot of fun with it. I dug it. The whole sequence with her under the tables and Michael's flipping over tables, and there's just a lot of fun to be had here. I really enjoyed. She's got some really good lines in kind of the scene leading up to her confrontation with Myers that I really dug, and just her character really starts to shine here, and it's just a lot of fun. I do, however, wish that the last sort of 5 minutes would have been handled a little bit differently when they bring Michael's body out onto a stretcher and Laurie decides to hijack the ambulance vehicle. It was a bit much. We also, we kind of get a cool car crash scene where they're tumbling down a hill. It leads to a bit of a cheesy shot when Michael gets pinned up against a tree when the van falls on him. I did love the beheading, was great. I just kind of wish that part would have been maybe trimmed and it all would have concluded in the actual school itself without her hijacking the car. More of a minor complaint, just a little thing. Also, I wish that they would have handled. I like Michael Myers' mask, but the eye holes are too big. I don't want to see his eyes. I like it better when it's just black, and I think it works better. It kind of gives him less of a humanity, I guess. And so another little complaint. But overall, guys, I had a fun time with this movie. This is one I could definitely see myself returning to. Overall, my grade for this, I think I'm probably going to be at like probably a 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, it's a good fun time. It's by no means like a great film, but it's a fun film, and I think they did a good job kind of getting things back on track, reconnecting this back to the first two Halloween films. Gave us just a great classic showdown, which I think is what the fans wanted, and I know I certainly enjoyed it, and so had a fun time with this one. So those are my thoughts on Halloween H2O. Next up, we've got, oh boy, Halloween Resurrection. And like I said, this will be a first time watch for me. I am aware of its reputation. And so, yeah, wish me luck. This will be an interesting one. So, anyways, Halloween Resurrection is coming up next, and we will see you next time on The Haunted Beard.